Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Hi, how are you? My name is Catherine Anaya. I'm a journalist and host of a PBS show called 𝐬𝐮𝐬𝐫𝐞, and I am going to be your MC moderator today, so thank you for being here. It is my pleasure to welcome you to the Scottsdale Founders Forum, where we bring together founders like you who are considering one of the most significant transitions in your entrepreneurial journey, and that is exiting your business. Now, whether you are here to learn, to connect, or take the first step, we are so thrilled to have you with us today. Now, I would like to take an opportunity to acknowledge what brought us here. Starting and growing a business is no small feat, as many of you told me today, and it's probably no surprise to you that most businesses fail. The sleepless nights, the calculated risks, the victories, both big and small, it is a journey that has shaped not just your business, but also who you are as individuals. And now as you begin to think about passing the baton, so to speak, you're faced with some new questions, I'm sure. What is the value of my business? How do I increase the value of my business before I sell? How do I find the right buyer or successor? How do I ensure that my team, customers, and legacy are in good hands, that is? When is the right time to actually exit? And what's my number that makes exit worthwhile? Am I ready? Those are all kinds of questions that can feel daunting for a lot of you, but know that you are not alone if you feel any of that. You are not alone in navigating those questions, and that is exactly why you are here today, and we are here. Over the next hour or so, we've designed the Scottsdale Founders Forum to provide you with insights, expertise, and experience to help you plan for an exit that makes sense for you and also for your company, and to provide insights and strategies to help plan your exit with confidence, avoiding those common pitfalls you've probably heard about and blind spots that the first-time seller often encounters. You'll hear from Steve Johnson, a founder who can stop bullets, literally. Wow, he's almost better than Superman. Actually, I think he is. You're also going to hear from a distinguished panel of professional experts who bring a wealth of experience in business transitions, whether it's selling to private equity, transitioning to family ownership, or ensuring a successful merger. Their professional expertise may seem a bit overwhelming, but it's important to understand that to have the most successful outcome for you, your family, and your business, you need a team of professionals, and that's what you are going to hear from today. So we are also going to hold a social hour, because we love to be social, where you can connect with other founders who are navigating those similar crossroads, and also connect with our distinguished panel of experts who you will meet with any questions that you might have for them. These conversations, they often spark new ideas and relationships that can make all the difference for you as you move forward. So as you sit here today, I want to emphasize that planning your exit is not the end, but a new beginning. It's an opportunity to turn your years of hard work into enduring value, to unlock new chapters for yourself, and to see your business continue to thrive in capable hands. This is not about walking away, it's about moving forward. And the best exits happen when they're planned with intention, clarity, and purpose. By starting to think about this transition right now, whether you're 5 years away, 2 years away, or maybe just beginning to explore, you're setting yourself and your family, your business, and your team up for success. You made a great decision to be here today, and the decisions you make in the coming years will shape your family's future, your legacy, and the legacy of your business. And the Scottsdale Founders Forum is here to support you every step of the way. So with that, let's go ahead and dive into our program. First up, you're going to hear from Armando Roman, CEO of AXIOM Founders Family Office, the family CFO and wealth management firm for Arizona founders and their families. Armando is a licensed CPA of 32 years. He exited his CPA firm nearly 20 years ago and founded AXIOM Founders Family Office 25 years ago. He is host of Arizona's podcast, The Founders Guidepost, and he created the Scottsdale Founders Forum, both designed to help founders have a more successful exit. He was responsible for prudent investment management and oversight of the Roman Catholic Diocese of Phoenix's investment portfolio, 10 years as investment committee chairman, appointed by 2 bishops in this role. So please, will you join me in a warm welcome for Armando Roman.
Welcome, everybody. And thank you for that welcome, Catherine. Can you hear me okay? Okay. I feel like I'm whispering, sorry. A couple of things, a little bit of housekeeping. You're going to see cameras back there. They're only capturing the stage. When I sold my CPA firm almost 20 years ago, I didn't want the clients to find out or my employees to find out because obviously that could drive down value. Very, very aware of that. I've been through that myself. That's why the video is only capturing this. And if anyone does end up on the video, we will edit that out. After the fact, we will have the video available to you. We have a lot of people who wanted to be here but couldn't. The information you're going to get is just going to be phenomenal information, so we wanted to capture it. We'll share it with all of you as well. Spoiler alert, everybody dies. It's just how it works, right? But your business, it doesn't have to. And if you take the right steps, you can transition that wealth you've built in your company to whomever you choose, the next generation, to private equity, to whoever. But you've got to take those right steps. I've spoken with 3 widows this year whose husbands did not take the right steps, and they suddenly died. I don't want to get any more of those phone calls this year. They're horrible phone calls to take. But that is the reality. So if you could please plan ahead, and that's what this is intended to do, help you understand what to plan ahead for, then you're going to be better off for it. So what are you going to know today? What you will know today is you will know when to begin planning. You will also know what expertise you need to have as part of your team when you're going through that exit. What will you have? You'll have an opportunity to hear from experts who are in this space every day, buying, selling companies, somehow in that picture as well. And you will have an opportunity to connect with them. The social hour, that's one of the benefits of our social hour. You can talk with them and ask them whatever questions. They're not going to charge you $1,000 an hour because that's not what this is set up for. But it's designed to help you understand that when your exit is coming, that you've got to have the right people on board, take those right steps, and then you will have the best outcome for you, your family, and your business as well. And what are you going to feel? You're going to feel a heck of a lot more confident and a lot more prepared as well because you will have gone through all these steps. At AXIOM Founders Family Office, we are your family office and a wealth advisory firm that is totally focused on the founder. And think about yourselves. All the founders sitting in these seats right now today, you know that the bulk of your wealth is in your company. That's normal. I can safely say a good 85% of your net worth is in your business. Why? Because that's normal. And that's why it's so critical that when you go through this exit, that you take those right steps, you don't leave money on the table, you plan for the taxes ahead of time, and then beyond the sale, you know what life is going to look like. Because people who haven't done that, they don't have a company anymore, they don't have a day job anymore, and they feel lost. And the majority of people, after they sell, they regret that they sold their company. You don't want to be one of those. You want to feel confident and great that it was a good move for you. The reason we have this Scottsdale Founders Forum, we had a client a few years ago, and they came to us from their CPA. Their CPA said, hey, Armando, this client, they need a 401k, they're growing really fast, just growing like crazy. Can you help them? Well, sure, we did. We can help them, and we did. We got a 401k set up for them, and they were too busy to do all the other planning that had to come along with it. And before we knew it, less than 12 months later, they were under contract to sell for $25 million. That's a pretty big number for just about anybody, right? 25 mil. So as they were going through that, I remember it was the first part of November, several years ago, and I knew that the couple that owned this company was very, very charitable, very philanthropic. They gave money away, and they liked, being stewards of the money they had. And I called their CPA and said, hey, our joint client here who is selling, I know they're very generous people. Have you spoken with them about how charitable giving can help reduce this once-in-a-lifetime tax bill that they're going to have? And his response was, he says, Armando, they're too busy right now. I'm going to wait till it closes, and then we'll have that conversation. The sale closed on December 30th. The next day was a half a day. It was New Year's Eve. So they went through this biggest tax event ever without having the right conversations with their tax CPA, and they probably maybe spent $6 to $8 million in taxes that they probably didn't need to do. And when I realized that, I said, that's never going to happen again to any of our clients or to anybody I know who owns a business. So that's why we have the Scottsdale Founders Forum. That's why this event is here 3 years later, 3 years running now, so that we can help you understand that you have a process and steps to go through to really have that successful exit that you want. So let me go ahead now and just talk a little bit more about what we do for our clients. People often think we are a business broker because we have this event. We're not a broker. There's an investment banker here. He's kind of a broker because his job is to take your company and sell it. They get paid based on a commission of what they do. We don't get a commission on whether you sell your company or not. We are not a broker. What we are is a family CFO, a wealth advisory firm focused on founders. And if you just think about your own balance sheet, your own net worth, most of your net worth is in this one company. So as your wealth advisory firm, as your family office, it just makes sense that we would understand what that business is and try to help lock down that value as best as possible for you and help navigate that sale as best as possible for your family when it's all said and done. That's why we do what we do. We get paid for financial planning. We get paid to be the family CFO. We get paid to invest money. We do not get a commission on the sale of your business. That's not the business that we're in. So with that, let me go ahead now and introduce to you Steve Johnson, because you're going to love hearing about Steve. And just like Catherine said, he's kind of like Superman. He can stop bullets. And if I didn't know any better, I went to a demo that Steve did about a year ago, and if I didn't see it myself, I would not believe it. He gets up at the shooting range. We're at the shooting range. He's at the shooting range. He has a 9mm in his hands, and he's blasting this glass that's maybe 20 feet away. The bullets do not penetrate the glass. And what is stopping that is a film that he developed that just gets applied to the glass. All this glass you see, his film could be on it. You wouldn't even see it. But if there were an active shooter, those bullets would not penetrate. And then what it also does, which is amazing too, Steve, is you can shoot out and your bullets will go out. I don't know how it works, but it's amazing. It's amazing. So what we'll do now is have a one-to-one conversation with Steve so that you can hear about his origin story. You can hear about how he went through exit and where he is today. Steve, you want to join me up here in the chairs, please? I've just got my phone to keep track of time because I will talk too long and I'm not here. So, Steve, you invented this thing that stops bullets. And again, I wouldn't believe I hadn't seen it with my own eyes. It's just amazing. You told me that in 2018 you were a one-man shop, right? Talk about, if you can, just your story to them about your business.
Perfect. Yeah, thanks for having me. So in 2018, I was a SWAT cop for Scottsdale PD. I was assigned to a special unit right after the Parkland school shooting, and the chief had decided he wanted to put a couple of SWAT guys in schools and shopping malls to be able to respond very quickly in the event of an active shooter. The other part of the assignment was that we had to be on police bikes. So on motorcycles, not bicycles. That wouldn't work good for me. Cardio's not my friend. So of course, naturally, the first question I ask is, do I have to write speeding tickets? And they're like, no, you don't got to write speeding tickets. So of course I bite, and I get on the unit. There's 2 of us, so we're riding around like chips, and pretty quickly I started to realize that all these principals, business owners, the biggest concern they had was glass. They needed to figure out a way. How can we, in classrooms, there's nowhere to hide. There's big glass windows. So I went down a deep dive in Google, and there was 4 or 5 other products that were available. Some marketed as ballistic, some as bomb resistant, shatter resistant. And of course, most dealers, most consumers want their products tested by SWAT guys. So they sent us some products. I got to test them. Nothing stopped bullets, nothing stopped bricks or river rocks. I'm like, this is kind of a problem. So about a year prior to that, I had gotten injured, and instead of going to photo radar, I chose to go to fatal car crash reconstruction school, which I thought was going to be a little bit more interesting. It ended up being a 3-week-long math class. So, but with that, the whole point of reconstructing a fatal car crash is to reconstruct it to where it doesn't happen. At what point does that vehicle stop? To where it doesn't go into a house or go into a hospital. So if you can stop a car, it's the same physics equation to stop a bullet. So I use those same physics equations, and then of course STEM, and was able to develop a window film, or the necessities in a window film, to stop bullets. And that's kind of where the company was born.
Pretty amazing, huh? So, Steve, you grew the business from scratch, and tell us then about, you had a partial exit here. How did you know it was time? How'd you know what to do? This was all new territory for you. Talk about that, please.
Yeah. So I didn't go to college. I mean, I have a couple years for criminal justice, but once I became a cop, there really was no need to continue college. That's what I was going to school for. So I started a company with $500, quickly got the laminate made. I had to pull a second on my house to get the laminate made. The first contract that I got, I paid the second off on my house, and continued to grow. Every dollar I brought in, I stayed on as a cop and continued to work both jobs. So I was working about 80 to 100 hours a week. And the first 2 years, I launched in September of 18. I did 300,000 or 400,000 that first year. In 19, I did $1.5 million. And then in 20, I think we did about $5 million. So we continued to grow. And as we grew, I had just the mindset, I was terrified of debt, so I didn't take on any debt, and continued just rolling money into it, buying more equipment. I didn't have my first employee until April of 2020. So I did everything for the first 2 years. And then I continued doing all of the admin work until January of 23. So I did all invoicing, all billing, business development, marketing. I was traveling around on American Airlines 5 or 6 days a week, going to different cities, doing demos, coming back, doing police work, and then getting back on planes, doing different demos. So it was pretty incessant, and I knew that the time to sell was. I was about to pull my hair out. I know I have a 5 head, not a forehead. I got a 5 head. And I saw like the hairline go, I'm like, this is not good. I should probably think about selling. And then of course we got to almost 20 million a year in revenue, and I'm just a cop at the end of the day. So I didn't know how to build a C-suite. I didn't know how to find a good CFO, find a good COO. I don't have those skills. I don't have those interviewing skills. And then if I did interview somebody, I wouldn't know who to hire. So that's where I decided, hey, let's bring in a PE group, an operating PE group, not just a finance back, but somebody that will bring in operating partners to assist with that.
And so when you did that, how did you know to even go to that kind of a group? You knew you needed some expertise, and I guess I want to fast forward a bit to the actual exit. How you knew that it was time to say, okay, I need to step out a little bit here. What was the realization for that? What was happening that led to that?
The big thing that was going on was crime. So we're a very crime-oriented business. We don't ambulance chase. We wait until they call us. And with the administration that was in place, from 20 to 24, burglaries, looting, they weren't punished. So crime was on the up for us. And then, of course, we started seeing Lululemons come to us, Macy's, Bloomingdale's, Pinterest. All these different international companies, us armoring for them. So we knew that it was a good time to sell. But of course, then I've never sold a company. So how do I do that? I think where I went right from the very beginning, from day one, was good contracts. I had an advisor in Las Vegas. He a third generation Ford dealer, and he wouldn't invest, but he says, I'll give you the best piece of advice is get a good attorney. And I was recommended to Mike Patterson, and Patterson's been my attorney since day one, and he's helped me everywhere from introduction to banks to introduction to, if I wanted a credit card, and then how do I get a bigger credit card, introduction to a couple different brokers or investment bankers to where I could help interview, and he assisted with interviewing. So you get a guy, like Patterson that understands, where you're weak, where you're strong, and then to fill in those right people. And I can't say enough nice things about Patterson and his team for sure.
Wow. Thank you, Steve. And we often see that where the business owner has one advisor who then helps them understand and meet the other advisors that are necessary. So you hire an investment banker, and you went through a lot to narrow that down, right? Maybe talk about that process and how you got to the one that was the right one for you.
Yeah. This is probably the part where I wish I would have taken a little bit more time. I rushed this part. I only interviewed 2, and then I did not negotiate at all the investment banker agreement. There was probably 1% or 1.5% that was left on the table. So that added up to quite a bit of money. Hindsight being 2020, I would have negotiated that quite a bit. And of course, how their fees were paid, when they were paid, stuff like that. I think there were quite a few lessons there that could have been learned. What was the other part of that?
How did you choose the investment?
Yeah, there was not much of a decision there. It was like, cool. I honestly, there was one guy that in the team, David Brinkley, he's the sole reason. He was just a smooth talker. Everything about him was. I just really liked the guy. So, and I trust him, but I should have. I probably should negotiate that a little bit better. I negotiate everything, but not that. That was weird. That was odd.
Thank you. So, you are still part of the company, and you state sometimes founders will stay on, sometimes they won't. And this is still fairly new for you, but do you think staying on why does staying on make sense for you?
So with my product being such a niche product, and with me being essentially the main business development guy, this year we doubled revenue from 23, and I'm a part of the majority, if not all of those business development endeavors. So there's 5 major security conferences. I go to all 5 of them. So I knew that any PE group, if I was going to get a good multiple, I'd have to stick around. So I knew I was going to have to roll at least a little bit. So when we pitched, the SIM went out to, or the teaser went out to 450 PE groups. We got 160, 170 requests for the SIM. We sent out the SIM to 160, 170 different PE groups. There were a few that I didn't send to. I was a part of that process of like, well, there are a couple companies you just wouldn't want to work with, and there was a few that I just didn't want to work with. Whether it be, when you Google the group, you're like, they got bad press. I didn't want to be a part of bad press, as I'm still a current Scottsdale cop. So we ended up picking 18, which is quite a few. And I did 18 management presentations in 2 weeks, which is unheard of. It was a busy 2 weeks, but I really wanted to get an idea of what are the commonalities with some of these private equity groups, and then what are some specialties or what are, just some niches with some of these. And I didn't even pick the PE group that offered the most money, but I liked the private equity group. I liked that they had so many founders and former CEOs on their board and on their operating partner list that if you've got 20 guys that are still around over the last 30 years, they're obviously doing something right because they've got so many former founders and CEOs. And I knew if I was rolling, I'm going to have to get along with these guys. And they were a very vast group of gentlemen and women, to where it didn't matter the personality. They obviously just did good business. The other thing that determined how much I rolled was 3 days before we closed, we got a really large government contract to where I almost didn't close. But I saw the writing on the wall, like I said, about the administration that was in place, and then kind of where politics could go and maybe being a little bit more tougher on crime. And then maybe that would have been a little bit less for our revenues. But now I'm noticing that just crime is kind of here to stay, unfortunately. So, which has led to large railroad contracts and so forth. So I think that kind of answers your question, though.
Yeah. And so, Steve, you're still in the company. The company's going through some incredible growth right now. And as you said, you're law enforcement. You were the SWAT team. So having you out there being as the sales guy, helping those contracts to actually close, I can see where that'd be very valuable for the company going forward, which obviously can add to value just the enterprise itself. So staying on as you have, you're now part of a bigger organization, and the founders in the audience here are thinking about their own exit, what they're going to do. And as you think about where you are, what you've been through, general thoughts on what would help them as they're having some of the same thoughts that you were having when you were in their boat.
I would say there's two things. An operational CEO that has worked with PE, you're bringing a consultant. You might spend $30,000 to $50,000 for the year, maybe a little more, maybe a little bit less. But remember, your business is going to be valued on a multiple. And I couldn't understand that, and because I'd never been there. So I was ignorant to that fact, so I didn't do that. The other part is you might have an accountant or a CFO or a controller that you think is appropriate or that is capable. And I had an amazing controller. He's an awesome dude, passed the CPA test. You think, oh, this guy's will get my books in check. But what you're not real, or what I didn't realize was, these are private equity's finance guys. That's all they do is attack accounting and attack your books, account your balance sheet, your P&L. And they're going to try and find every little add back or deduction that they can to try and lower that EBITDA. So finding a good CFO and paying that extra $50,000 a year for the salary for that CFO, and you'll be able to find that strong CFO either from a headhunter or from that CEO consultant that has worked with private equity as well. And you can find those CEO, hired CEOs for PE, through LinkedIn, through legal or whomever. So it's crucial. And I'm not going to say that it would have added another 20 million, but it at least would have added another 3 to 5 million if I would have had that extra 50 to 100 grand worth of payroll for those two positions, or at least a consulting and then a proper CFO that understood going through transactions. And it's just, when you're dealing about multiples, it's worth it. So worth it.
Perfect. Thank you, Steve. That's about all the time we have. And thank you so much. Please, a round of applause for Steve Johnson, please. So let me call the panelists up here so we can have our panel discussion. So Mark, Mike, Sam, Greg.
Thank you, Steve. That was awesome. Can we give him another big round of applause? I don't know about you, but that was really informative, and congrats on all your success. We have a very esteemed panel with us today, and so I want to begin by introducing our panel of experts. Starting on your far right, Mark Young. Mark is an investment banker. His role is to take your company to market in an auction process to find the right buyer given your goals. So you can kind of think of him as your broker on steroids. He's a real deal. Next to Mark is Mike Patterson, and Mike is a merger and acquisition attorney. His role is to make sure that your letter of intent and sale purchase agreement have all of the practices that you need, the protections that you need in these legal agreements. Now, I'm oversimplifying, of course, but think of Mike as your specialized legal expertise when it comes time to actually sell. And next to Mike is Greg Patel, CPA. Greg is your tax strategist, helping to, of course, bring down that enormous tax bill when you sell your largest asset. Next to Greg is Sam DiPetrio, and Sam is an estate planning attorney. His role is to understand what you're trying to accomplish for your family and your community given the assets that you have, and draft legal documents to protect your family and your assets while you are alive, and to take care of your family after you pass, also to minimize taxes and risk to your family all along the way. And of course, we have Armando, the family CFO and wealth manager from multiple founder families and founder of AXIOM Founders Family Office. Welcome, all of you. Thank you so much for being here. So let's get started with your words of wisdom, beginning with Armando. What is the biggest question or concern that you help that first-time seller address?
I'd say that people don't know if they're ready. Is it really the right time? And so being ready, is it emotionally ready, mentally ready? Is your family in the place where you want them to be? Are the asset base what you want it to be? And there's so much that happens during that exit, and just thinking about it can be really overwhelming. So often what we'll do is we'll sit with the founder, often a couple, and just have a conversation, have a dialogue. Is this really what you want to do? And let's say that you're not working anymore. What are you going to do after that? What's that lifestyle going to cost? So we help them think about beyond the transition so that they begin to think about life after, this busyness, and help them really get to the place where they are comfortable that they say, yes, we're going to do this. Or maybe their decision is, no, we're not going to sell. We're going to keep it. We're going to pass it on to the next generation. And that's fine too. But the question that we get, the biggest concern is, am I ready to really take this step? Because it's a once in a lifetime decision and there are no do-overs.
And that's why exploring early is important.
Exactly. Got to begin well in advance to have the best exit for your family.
Thank you. Mike, what is the basic anatomy of a sale?
Okay. Well, if you're going to run a process with an investment banker, which Mark will tell you about, you're going to get a lot of competition in there, run up the price. Oh, sorry. Can you hear me now, or I need to turn it on?
Yeah, turn on, slide that
Okay.
switch.
Sorry about that. I recommend that you run a process, step one, with an investment banker, get lots of interested parties, run up the price, and create not only price leverage, but legal leverage for your lawyer, so that we have leverage to get the terms we want out of the deal. But after you've got that going, we're going to make some decisions on in the beginning, actually before that, whether you're going to do an asset sale or an equity sale. Most of the time it's an asset sale. In some cases, you may have key licenses or key contracts we can talk about, which would push you towards an equity sale. Then you're going to negotiate that letter of intent. We'd like to keep an exclusivity period with the person that you pick to actually go to sale with out of the ones that they brought for leverage. And we'd like to limit the due diligence period and the exclusivity period and some other terms. Then we're going to get to what we call the definitive documents, the actual purchase documents, and that's what I draft a lot of, and we'll talk more in a minute about what goes into that. Then you'll enter into a due diligence period where the potential buyer here is going to come and kick the tires in many, many ways on your business, and we want to be ready for that. We're preparing. Then it'll close, and then post-closing, if you've sold it all for cash and you just walk away, that's one thing. Then you're going to get on to what Armando's going to do with the rest of your life. But in many, many cases, as Steve mentioned, you will either roll some equity, which they want to keep you around for a little bit so that this is successful, and they may have you for a couple of years. And if you're going to stay in, we want to have you have some control so that you can influence a little bit of control, so you can influence the value of your earnout, which is if it was not all paid up in cash, if they pay some out over time. And then there's a final, I'll mention here, in the anatomy, just the quick bullets. There's generally, after a period, a true-up after the sale where we look at the milestones you've hit, but also some things that were unable to be determined right at the moment of sale in terms of taxes and other things, and a little bit of true-up.
So there is a lot to the anatomy, and we'll get into the nitty-gritty of that. Sam, can you talk about estate planning opportunities for that founder who has never gone through an exit before?
Certainly. And so estate planning, it's always a tough thing to get people in the room, as you can imagine, because you're dealing with, well, death and taxes. And so two unpopular things, you combine them into one. People tend not to want to meet about that, but it's important for a founder to take the steps well before the exit. And what I mean by that is there's planning opportunities that you can do both to minimize income taxes, but then also estate taxes to the extent that you want to transfer wealth to the next generation without paying a 40% hit. What some of those strategies look at is moving assets into irrevocable trust, changing the situs of assets if you're trying to avoid or mitigate state taxes, or also asset protection, because obviously you had a business before and now you're going to have a large liquid pot. And one of the concerns for a lot of founders, especially on the first exit, is people are going to know you sold the company, right? Sometimes that's good, sometimes that's bad. Well, if it's going to be bad and they know that you're a liquid target, it's how do we make you less of an attractive target from an estate planning side. And the last thing I'll add, and this is kind of the most difficult part of the puzzle, and I'll say that because taxes are pretty easy to solve. That's my job. It's what I do all day, every day. The more difficult question and the more difficult part is what do you do with that money, right? How do you plan your legacy? If you want to start transferring money to kids or the next generation or to charities, how do you make that happen? Because as you heard me say before, some of the strategies are irrevocable. And as you can kind of guess by the name of that, you lock it in. And so it's really spending the time before, oh gosh, I got the letter of intent, I want to plan next week, right? It's 5 months, 6 months, maybe even a year out of planning to really figure out how am I going to structure this sale, both from the estate and income tax side, but then also the legacy side.
So there's obviously a lot to think about. As an investment banker, Mark, what is the primary role that you play in this process for your clients?
Sure. During a process, we wear a lot of different hats. But I think the primary role that we play, and Steve kind of touched on it, is we level the playing field with the buyers. The buyers are very, very experienced, and so it's not their first rodeo. So when they come to look at your company, they're not only experienced, but they're bringing a group of advisors that are as well. And so what our primary role is to make sure that we can bring our experience to the table to level set with them, as well as make sure you've got a group of advisors that are too experienced with doing transactions, so that when you go to the negotiating table, you've got the same level of experience pitted against those guys.
Moving to Greg now, what tax planning opportunities and strategies are available for the business owner when they begin meeting with you well in advance of the actual sale?
Yeah, thank you. So when it comes to tax strategies, there's as was discussed, there's asset sales versus stock sales. That's a really big discussion. So there's education needs to happen. The type of entity that you are, it's really important as to how you are going to move forward with the type of structure of the sale. And that will impact the best type of outcome. So entity is really important. The other thing that I want to kind of add to discussion number one, right? When everybody's selling their business, they want to know what are my tax implications here. So tax implications is one thing. You also, in order to maximize the sale benefit, you want to take into account the buyers. What is the buyer going to ask when they are doing their due diligence period? So on our side, we want to make sure that we kind of think of those things as we're going through and discussing things like when it comes to sales tax, is sales tax filed? When it comes to your income tax, is that filed in various states? You want to make sure that you've got all the compliance buckled down, because it's really important, because there are going to be situations where they find on the due diligence side that it's not as clear as you thought. And so it's really important to maximize that in order to or to get that under in line to maximize the sale potential. And finally, you have to have clean books. When your books are clean, and your potential buyer looks at them, and they're talking about or looking at potentially other companies that they're looking at, and yours are the cleanest, it's really important that yours sticks out more than theirs, because you've got everything together. So those are, at least there's many more things, but those are three main things that we kind of discuss with our clients when we first talk to them.
Thank you. Clearly, there are a lot of moving parts. Armando, when a founder is ready to transition out of their business, what steps do they need to take with you?
Well, we want to make sure that they know where they are. So what we're looking at, we want to build out their balance sheet for them, their personal balance sheet, so we know what the assets are, how they're titled. Because the big question, once you get done working in your company and you stop getting that paycheck from your company, where's the paycheck going to come from after that? And how much is that paycheck going to be net of taxes? And how long will that paycheck last? Is it going to last 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years? So we want to build out a comprehensive, holistic plan for them so that they can see that path for the rest of their life, and they can see what's left for the kids once their time comes, and they can see what's going to be there for charity so they can reach all the goals they're trying to get to. So for us, how we help them with that transition is we help them understand what to expect, what life is going to look like beyond the sale, and often it's a very stressful time going through that sale, and so we want to help them understand what's normal and what's not, and then making sure they've also got that team of people, the investment banker, Mark on the end, Mike the lawyer, and just to quickly mention, Steve mentioned Mike Patterson, his attorney. This is the Mike Patterson he talked about. This is the Mike that built that team for him. If you don't know any better, you don't know what to do. So we're helping them understand they've got to have that team, they've got to have all the pieces put together, and then we're building out that paycheck. Once that turns into cash, we build out that portfolio for them so they can see month by month by month what is income going to be net of tax.
Excellent point. Thank you so much for that. I want to go back to Greg, because when a founder really wants to have an impact with their charitable giving, something Armando touched on earlier, and they're going towards exit, how can tax strategies help them maximize the charitable impact that they have? Yeah,
don't do it December 30th like Steve's accountant did. So, yeah. So if you own a corporation and you want to consider having it, and you have a charitable intent, one of the things is, have a discussion And maybe the discussion leads to, gifting of some of your shares to the charity. Now, it's really important to discuss this, right? This isn't just, because I said it, let's just do it. Talk to your advisors about doing it before you do it, because I'm giving you, these things at a very high level. And so gifting is an option, whether you do it before the sale, after the sale. There are repercussions and that you want to consider. The other charitable type of thing is a charitable trust. Usually there's what's known as a charitable remainder trust or a charitable lead trust, right? When do you want to have which type of trust in what type of environment? So it's really important to talk to Sam about those types of things. Another is a donor advised fund. That's an option. Well, now if you gift, or if you gift your donor advised fund, or your shares or your stock to a donor advised fund, well, there's different rules. There's a different limitation when it comes to tax AGI versus just straight up cash. So these are all things that we've got to discuss, but those are some some strategies.
Wonderful, thank you. Here's a question I'm sure a lot of you are thinking. How is the value, and this is for you, Mark, how is the value of a company determined?
Again, Steve kind of touched on that. Like most investments, businesses are valued on the strength of the cash flow. And for what I'm assuming the types of businesses that we have here today, and Steve touched on it, it's really a multiple of that cash flow. And the multiple is based on typically 12 to 15 factors. Some apply to companies and some don't, but that when we look at putting together a value for a company, we look at these factors. And the key ones, or the 3 or 4 top ones that we see applied to most companies are, one is the industry that they're in. So a hot industry is going to get a higher multiple. Second is size. Size matters. So the bigger the company, the bigger the multiple. Third is the consistency of that cash flow. So if it's reliable and they have a lot of years of growth of that cash flow, they're going to get a higher multiple. And last but not least, really the top 3 or 4 factors is the management team. The depth and strength of that team. That's going to matter a lot to the buyers, because if you as a seller, you want to leave, they're going to be relying on those folks that you've had in the company running it to make sure that they're good. And they can always bring people in, but it's nice to have people there already. So those are the top 3 or 4 factors that we look at, and then we break it down from there and things that are more specific for the industry that they're in. But again, as Steve mentioned, that multiple, if you can tweak that a little bit, you do the math, and that adds a lot. So pre-planning to increase that multiple can help a lot to get to the value you'd like to have.
Thank you, Mark. Sam, this question is for you. Do the results of the recent election have an impact in the planning or the strategies in your estate planning for the founder?
Yes, they do, non-surprisingly. And I will say, death, taxes, and politics, all we need is religion to make it even more fun to talk about. But with regards to the election, I will say the biggest thing is uncertainty. And what I mean by that is we have a law that says the estate tax exemption, how much you can give away estate tax-free, is going to change, but there might be a change to the law before that change actually happens. And so from my side, it's really taking the time for founders to plan, right? If the sale is going to be next year, well, let's have that conversation so we have a plan in place, A, if the law does change, B, if the law does not change. Because that plan could be very different, right? And the strategies that you employ might be very different to address it. So it's really spending the time to kind of plan out all of the different options with respect to where things could go. Because if you Google, estate tax right now, you're going to see articles from it's going to go away to no, it's actually still going to drop. I don't know. My crystal ball is no better than anybody else's, but what I do know is it's the people that plan well in advance that are going to be better set than the people that wait till the last minute. because as you can tell with me losing my hair, we were busy, very busy this year because everybody was rushing to plan. And I imagine next year is going to be the same.
Great, thank you. Besides sales price, Mike, what else should the seller consider?
Well, let's say that we get a really great investment banker like Mark, and like in Steve's case, first round there were 12 people interested, and then 8, and then 6, and then 4, and then picked out of the final group. So let's say we're down to that final group. Who should we be considering other than just the sales price? There's a lot of things. How much are they gonna pay up front? Let's say everybody offers on your business $45 million, but one of them's offering to pay most of that up front and a small earn-out rollover, but the other 2 are saying, we're going to give a higher price, but we're only going to buy this portion of your company. You're going to roll equity, as we say. You're going to stay in it with equity. And in Steve's case, that's great. He's young and he wants to roll with this. Some may be not ready to do that. You're ready to call it quits, and don't have family that want to be in it. So are they splitting in cash and in equity and what we call the earn-out, where a lot is very common that they pay some cash, and then if you hit these milestones, then we'll pay you additional monies and called earn-out. And then let's talk about who is the buyer. Is this a strategic or a venture capital firm or a family office out there looking at you? A lot of founders, when they come to a meeting like this, they say, I know there's only really 1 or 2 people that would ever buy my business. I know who they are. They're the big fish who are up above us, and we know them. I think most of the people on this panel would say, no, that's not right. There's probably 20 or 30 people in this country that would love your business, particularly if it's producing, if the cash flow is good and your numbers are good and you've got a great management team that he described, et cetera. There's a lot of people that want to invest in good businesses. Do they have a good reputation? Have they closed deals before? Is this their first road? They've only done recent, or have they closed 10 and they have a track record of entering that LOI and 3 months later the deal's done? Versus one that doesn't. Can they deliver? If you're going to do an earn-out with them, can they take your company to that next level with you and run with you so that you can hit those milestones? And then many of you probably be concerned about your employees and your business culture and your reputation in the industry, your brand, and you're looking for a buyer who's going to treat your employees right, who's going to preserve that good guy culture, and is going to really be respectable brand going forward.
All very important details. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, if I could add something, and Mike knows this well, there's a couple things. You also want to know that the buyer has the money. There's a lot of guys running around wanting to buy companies based on your assets. And so in the business, we call it a funded buyer. So you want to know somebody can write a check, and that's either strategic or somebody in the PE world that has already raised the money. You hate to go through selling your business to somebody and then they have to sell it to someone else to do the transaction. So you want to make sure they're funded. But the other thing that's key, and I think Mike touched on that, you want to have options, and that's why we run a controlled auction process. We want to go out to as many buyers as we think that makes sense, so that we get options for you coming to you, because there are different terms and different people will have different thoughts on your value and on the terms they want to offer. So we oftentimes talk to business owners who are talking to a single buyer, because they've called them, they've been talking to them for a couple years, they know my industry, they seem like good guys, I like them, and we say that's great, but why don't we involve them in a process with other buyers as well, so you'll see some options. So like I always told my kids, you want to have options in life. When you're selling your business, you want to have options.
Could I just add?
Yes, go ahead, Mike.
Our investment banker friends often say, hey, you have a strategic buyer came and gave you an LOI and it's for a lot of money. You say, wow, that's more than I ever expected to sell my business. They will often say, that's the lowest bid you're ever going to see. If you let us get involved in the process and get you 10, the price will go up. And when those bids come in and he's running the process and we're going from 10 down to 6, down to 4, down to finally the one you choose, your team from Armando, to the accountant, to me, to the investment banker, we all huddle and look at those bids and give our thoughts together as a team.
That's why it's called the A-team, right? This is for Greg. When you think about the founder selling their business, does the type of business entity matter?
It matters a lot. I think one of the big mistakes that tax professionals make is the rush to create an S corporation or make the election. The S election or the S corporation has the least, it's the most rigid type of entity that's out there. It doesn't allow the flexibility of a partnership or LLC that's there. And so when you've got these opportunities that you want to go down the path of selling in the next 5, 10 years or whatever, the type of entity structure that you are in is imperative. Yeah.
Thank you. Mark, back to you. After your clients have completed their sale, how often do you hear them comment something along the lines of, if I had to do it over again, I would have blah, blah, blah?
We hear that a lot. But the two common things that we do hear is, I wish I'd started sooner on the process. And it's great that you're all here doing this now, but yeah, they say, I wish I'd started sooner. For peace of mind, to maybe get more value, but just feel better about what they're doing. The other point that's been touched on here and by Steve, they would have invested sooner more resources into the financial reporting. Because, as has been mentioned, when you go up against the buyers, they've got a plethora of CPAs and folks looking at those numbers, so they need to hold up. And you've all been negotiating your whole life. If you go into negotiations on good footing, you'll feel good about it. But once you start those negotiations and they start chipping away at your numbers, then you start to then lose some leverage in those negotiations. So we advise, and our clients thank us for this, to make sure you've got good numbers before you go to market.
Very important detail. Thank you. Armando, how do you help a founder navigate exit?
When they haven't gone through exit before, they don't know what to expect. And stress levels can be very, very high. So we want to help them understand what they should expect. We want to make sure they've got a good Mike Patterson on board, a good Mark on board. We walk them through with the estate documents as well. We'll go with them to their estate attorney, because often when we have the couple at our conference table and we're having this very deep and involved conversation, it's not uncommon for one of the couple to just have tears running down their face. And they might not have that same kind of a meeting with their estate lawyer. So we're going to go with them to the lawyer's office and make sure that what they conveyed to us, that the attorney is understanding what was so heartfelt to them and important to them. So that when Sam is now drafting the documents for them and with them, that those really are on target for them. Because often what happens is you go to these mills and people will produce estate documents who are not as thorough or don't specialize like Sam does, and they do maybe 12 things, that lawyer, 12 different practices for their law, and one of them is estate planning. Well, I don't ever want to go to that attorney. I want to go to the guy who specializes, and this is what the guy does. So we go with them to the attorney to understand and interpret and make sure attorney is clear what that family is trying to get to. And as I mentioned before, we want to map out to them after the sale, what is life going to look like, and help them have more conversation. Do you want to volunteer? Do you want to go on a mission trip? Do you want to be with your grandkids 24/7? You know, what do you really want out of life? And when you take that last breath, what are you going to look back on and say, I'm so glad I did that? So we're helping them see that path and understand so that this really is the right decision for them when it is that time.
Thank you. Sam, you're also a certified public accountant. How does being a CPA help you work with a founder and their family in their estate planning?
It helps a lot because when you kind of do the stuff that I do, which is the more advanced estate planning that involves the state tax, income tax, and then state level tax, it really does help to be able to read the numbers. I know as attorneys, numbers kind of give us a little heartburn. So I wouldn't say, you wouldn't hire me to do, any advanced math, but I can do basic algebra, which is good. But what it does is it really gives me the confidence to say, okay, I know how this is going to work on the tax return, right? It's not that I'm just drafting the document. I kind of know how it's going to flow and how I want to flow. And so for me, it's really given me the insight to be able to say, okay, how can I connect the dots? Now, I don't do everything, right? But I do make sure that I'm able to work with the team of CPAs, advisors, investment bankers to make sure that the estate planning documents match the hope and the expectation with the business deal.
Thank you. Mike, back to you real quickly. There's an expression that we all have heard of, the devil is in the details. What details in the sales contract should the seller be most cautious about?
Okay, I'll try not to put you to sleep here, okay? But there's things she'll ask about in a moment, I think, called reps and warranties, so I'll leave that for a little more. But where you're saying, I am warranting to the buyer these things, and you can rely on it, and you could be technically sued on that if they were wrong. And so you work with your team, your lawyers, and you make sure they're right, okay? An indemnity section is really key that has what we call caps and baskets. They have to have enough in the basket before they bother you with a claim while you're on vacation in Belgium sipping wine. But they also have a cap. We negotiate a cap for you that your total liability for these particular reps and warranties cannot exceed X. And then there is also growing in my field, your field, if you're doing M&A, is the merger and acquisition, there is rep and warranty insurance that is available. Used to be super expensive, and only the biggest deals would use rep and warranty insurance. But now it's becoming more and more common, and many companies doing it, and the price is coming down, so you can actually buy away some of your risk in the deal. At least consider it. It may not be worth it for you. If the earnout and roll, if part of the purchase price is pushed, until you hit some milestones, or if you're keeping some equity, we certainly want to keep you in some sort of influence or control. You may not be controlling the company, but we don't want somebody cooking the books after you're out of the seat, because those numbers mean something to you in terms of your earnout. We need to document anything, any formula that's not clear on how you get this and when this will be determined. Those are risks, and so there's a devil in the details. And we also need to know how things get resolved. If there is a problem between you and them, we want to know what the dispute resolution is. If this number is key in the document, how's that going to be determined? And if you can't agree, how that's going to be resolved.
All valuable information. We are still awake. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Mark, what's currently happening in the M&A market?
Sure. The election was, I think, good for the market. After 2022, or 2021 actually, we had record year there. We had record numbers of transactions and record numbers of the values that people paid for companies. Then in 22 and 23, they kind of went the other direction. But again, we were at record levels, but they went the other direction because of inflation, interest rates, and as was mentioned here before, the uncertainty in the market. We've seen things start to turn kind of mid-year this year. The prospects for the end of the year reports, I think, will be some growth in the activity, and the general consensus, I think, is that 2025 is going to be better. And so if you're considering selling in the next year or two, you're probably selling on the uptick. And we always tell our clients you want to have some wind in your sails and in the economy sale when you go to sell. So if you're thinking about it, it may be a good time to consider it.
Thank you. Armando, I know you touched on this a little bit, but as a family CFO, what do you do after the sale to help the family?
So after the sale, this is obviously a big transition that you're going to go through when that time comes for you. And it's understanding what you want to do, how you want to live afterwards. So often what will happen is you're not going to ride off into the sunset and never be seen and heard from again. But think about the super wealthy families in America, the DuPonts from way back in the day, the Carnegie family. They had their own family offices. They had people full-time. Their job was to look over your wealth and make sure everything is where it needed to be. So they would have a full-time CFO, maybe a full-time lawyer, and they were paid just to take care of the family wealth and the family assets. We're doing the same thing. We don't have a lot of families who are the Carnegies or the DuPonts, but there are lots of families, just like you in the room here, who've done really, really well. And you care about your wealth going forward as just like everybody else does, and you want to have that team on board to help make sure you're not missing anything in your planning. State documents got to be correct. You're getting the right tax CPA. So we're helping them keep on top of things and monitor things because life changes every day. And everything might be perfectly fine today, and then tomorrow a monkey wrench happens. And so you need to have that team on board to help you as your family CFO really understand and navigate and then bring in the appropriate experts when that expert is needed.
Speaking of family, this next question is for you, Sam. Founders often create first-generation wealth. They want to preserve and protect that wealth, of course. They want to support their family and give to charity. How can estate planning help them do this?
Yeah, and so this goes back to timing. And what I mean by that is the estate tax, just not to put anybody at a high level right now, what it is anything above $27 million for a married couple or $14 million for a single person, either transferred at life or during life or at death, gets hit with the 40% estate tax, anything above that. So from my side, what planning looks like is, okay, how can I make the best use of that 27 for a married couple or 14 for a single person? And one of those strategies is being able to discount things, being able to take a business, move it out of your taxable state at a lower amount so I can move more out. Once again, it takes time, right? And the biggest time thing, and oftentimes isn't me drafting the documents, it can be the appraisal process. Because as anyone that's sold a business knows, they will ask a lot of questions. They will want to go back and forth. I can have the documents drafted in a couple weeks. The appraisal might take much longer. And so it really is finding the time to get it done. And if it's not passing wealth on to the next generation, but rather charitable planning, oftentimes you have the same conundrum. It's okay, I need to get this asset appraised. I need to figure out whether it's better to gift it before I sell the business or after I sell the business.
Thank you.
Can I add on that? Could you comment on the M&A attorney or team over here maybe trying to ram forward and get bids and get this deal done, and all of a sudden they say, wow, I need to do some estate planning that needs an appraisal. Well, how would it affect your appraisal if we had 3 signed offers in the door? Do you want to get that done before?
No, and I mean, this is relevant. I had
Go ahead.
I had a client that we were going to do some estate planning, and then yesterday they got an offer for $25 million. Wonderful for them, right? For me, that locks it in. Once you get that letter of intent for $25 million, you know, the IRS isn't dumb. They know if someone else says,
How much would it have been otherwise without that offer?
I would have think we could have at least gotten a 30%, if not more, discount transferring it out of their estate.
Okay.
But, you know, you never know, and I'll never know for that one, but I know it would be a lot less than 25.
Significant enough. Mike, what are reps and warranties?
Warranties are, you're going to say in this document, I represent and warrant that. Now, represent is I'm telling you this is true, and the warrant says, and I'm going to guarantee it. And if I'm wrong, then the risk is being allocated to me. That is warranted, and if that's wrong, then that is actionable back against you. We're going to make sure we're going to work over all of those with you and spend some significant time walking through each one of those. Okay, are you aware of any litigation, any pending claims out there, any employees that are unhappy or this, that, and the other? Do you have any infringement on your intellectual property? Are there distributors out there who are unhappy with you? Have you paid all your taxes? Are there tax disputes pending with this, that, and the other? You're going to make reps and warranties about all those issues. The other thing is, whose knowledge is that based upon? Is it in your organization, is it just Greg in the organization, the owner, who is repping and warranting that, or is the buyer saying, I want the representation and warranty to include and the knowledge of, if I put a knowledge qualifier, to the knowledge of, and that knowledge is Greg? Or if the buyer pushes back and says, I want that to be Greg and your CFO and your manager and that kind of thing, the big group, and so we want to limit that down. All these things in the documents. We don't want clawbacks based upon this, that, and the other, and this ties into the indemnities as well. And how long they last. There are some things that are going to last forever. Like my company was properly organized, and it is a legitimate under the laws of the corporation. Well, you can make that, and that's good forever. But some of the other warranties that you make are going to only last for 1 year or 2 years, and we're going to negotiate when they expire. And then if they find out something after 2 years, well, you're off the hook.
Thank you.
Can I add something to that, too?
Yes, go ahead, Mark.
I'm sure Mike tells all of his clients this. This is the time to tell everything for a couple of good reasons. One is it's all out there, so there's no surprises, good or bad. It's all out there. And the other thing is, after you sold the company, you want to be able to sleep well at night, and you don't want to be thinking about that year or two where you still have that exposure out there. So if there's something, hopefully it's not a deal killer, but at least if there's something out there, they'll find it at some point. And as long as you disclose it, it's fine. But if you hold it back and they find it, then there's problems. So.
Well, you just teed up my final question, and that's for Greg. We touched on this a little bit, but I want to go just a little bit more in depth. How important is it for the seller to have clean financial statements?
Yeah, it's really important. To what Mark was kind of talking about, I'm just going to take a little bit of so we had a client who was selling their corporation or their entity, and it was a publicly traded company that was buying them. So we've got big dollars, right? That's acquiring this company. Somehow, and this is a SaaS platform company, somehow they found out that there was a contract that was existing in China, Hong Kong, I think, that they needed, and I don't even know what the word is. I mean, you may know, but they found an attorney. They needed to hire an attorney out of New York to do this in-depth analysis. So I don't even think my client knew that this was even an issue, but how deep the buyer's side, when they're doing the due diligence, goes into, it's incredible. And so when it comes to clean books, I mean, that's just a basic, right? I mean, you want to make sure you have at least, in my mind, 3 years worth of financial statements that are being issued by a CPA, that you are providing some sort of assurance to the financial statement, because these are going to go to outside parties. And when they go to an outside party, they just don't want, well, you hear printed from QuickBooks, and here, it's going to be way more detailed than that. They want to make sure that everything that's represented on the balance sheet is accurate and true, and same with the P&L. They just want detailed information, and they're going to ask for several years of that information and some documentation to back those things up.
Thank you so much for that. I think we can all agree that this has been very valuable information, and you are definitely the A-team. So can we please give these gentlemen a big round of applause for serving as our panelists? And I know you're just itching to get to that social hour, so I'm going to go ahead and let Armando come up and close this out, for this portion anyway.
So I'm going to quickly summarize what we just heard from the people on, and I'll start with the very left-hand side, my left-hand side, your right-hand side. Mark is the investment banker. His job is take your company and understand what that company is, understand what drives value, and to then take that company to an auction process and get multiple people looking at your company. Because you know how that works. The more people want your company, guess what? You're going to get a better deal, a higher price, a better exit. There's no downside for you. And that's what Mark does on the very end over there. Next to him is Mike. He is the specialized attorney about buying and selling companies. That is what Mike Patterson does. You heard Steve talk about him and how valuable he was in helping Steve build his team. So now the man who can stop bullets is in a much better place because Mike was his lawyer, specialized attorney, and helped him build out that team that he needed to have on board. Greg, in the middle here, Greg Patel is the tax strategist. His job is to help look at where you are. And as he said, if you're not structured correctly, you might be shooting yourself in the foot. So it makes total sense to get with your tax CPA now. And are you the right structure or not? Well, let him look at it now. Don't wait till you get a sell in a year or 2 or 3. Let him look at it now because it matters. And going through that whole process, he can help you identify those areas that can dramatically reduce that tax bill. And then next to me over here, Sam DiPietro. Sam is an estate lawyer, but he's also a CPA. So imagine the additional value he brings to you because, as he said, he's got that knowledge base. You don't want him making your financial statements for you. That's not his role. But he certainly is extremely an expert in the estate planning laws that are out there. And he mentioned domicile. Do you want to have the estate documents really in Arizona or maybe Nevada or Tennessee or someplace else? It matters. And the one who helps you figure that out is Sam, because that is Sam's role. So again, don't wait till it's time for you to sell. Do it now. And as Sam mentioned as well, he was going through this estate planning process with the client, and the client, there's this thing called discounting, and it matters to CPAs and to estate lawyers because discounting means all these different factors come into play. Company might be worth $30 million on the open market, but you can discount that for this, and maybe it's worth $20 million. And so now when he drafts your estate documents, you're locked in at that lower value. But once you have that offer, it's kind of too late. Now he's got to go by what the open market says because that's what the open market has decided, and now you're kind of stuck. So before that happens, you want to see Sam DiPietro. Since I'm not sitting there, but what I said is making sure that you're really ready for this process. This is a once-in-a-lifetime event. You've built an extremely valuable asset. It's provided for your lifestyle, for your family, for the charitable giving that you give today, and it's going to take care of your family, you, and probably many future generations because of what you have done, what you've sacrificed now to build that wealth. So it's making sure that you're really ready, making sure that you have your A-team on board and you've talked with all of them so that when you decide that you are ready, there's no question, there's no doubt, there's no second guessing yourself. You and your spouse are very clear that, yep, this is the right time, it's the right step, let's go ahead and go forward because it matters and it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. So again, thank you to the panelists for all that expertise. And let me just go through now and close out our event. You've heard a lot of good information here. And the reason, as I mentioned, the reason we have this event is because as a wealth advisory firm, as a family CFO, your most valuable asset is your company. You often, if not all of you, started that from scratch. There was nothing there on day one, and now you look back and it's, wow, you achieved the American dream. And our American capitalist system is driven by you. It's not Elon Musk. It's not Jeff Bezos. Yeah, you hear it in the news every day. It's you guys who really make this economy work. It's all of you. And that's why we like working with you so much. So as a wealth advisory firm, our role is to help you navigate this and make sure that you take all those appropriate steps. I want to introduce Tom Markey, but there you are. You're standing up now. Tom is my business partner. We've got some information back here. Tom is a wealth advisor and financial planner as well. We are both, I was a CPA for 32 years. We were both a lot of CPA experience. But when you think about that team that you want managing your money and making sure that the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed, typically what we hear is we want the CPAs involved, not in Greg's role, but in our role, because we're much more thorough and you're much less likely to miss anything along the way as you are walking down that path of life. And so we have a special offer we're going to make to you as well, and I'll get to that later. We'll follow the phone calls for you. But again, we had this because you are our client base, and we know that this doesn't exist out there. Getting this team of people together, it just isn't out there. That's why we have these throughout the year. And we will follow up with each of you to say, hey, if you liked what you had here, let's have a conversation and see how else we can help you as well. So with that, I will go ahead and close out this part of our Scottsdale Founders Forum. Catherine and I thank you so much for moderating and leading the session here. Imagine you're waking up the day after you sold your business. The coffee smells great and you feel amazing. No more payroll, no customer complaints, that's done. And you got top dollar for your business because you planned ahead and took all the right steps. That's what's possible when you implement the concepts you've heard here today. For your complimentary consultation, call 480-367-9000.